Shalom everyone. This video is dedicated to the Chana Hinda, Eshet Tzvi Hirsch Mechanic, and to a little Shalhevet, but Hanania with Hila. May both of them have a refuah shlema, a refuat nefesh, refuat gufi, speedy and quick and full healing. If you would like to sponsor a video for the name of a loved one, just let us know by email, torathmoshe@gmail.com. That's torathmoshe@gmail.com. Could it be that if we only knew what the true shape of the temple menorah was, that with a key of understanding given to us by the sages of the Talmud and Josephus Flavius 550 years even before the Talmud was compiled, that we might discover that the Torah contains great astronomical wisdom? To be specific, with greatest respect to Aristarchus of Samos, not that it matters in any way, not that we needed to have been there first, not at all, but might we have still been there first? So people who care enough to study history know that over 2,000 years before Copernicus, the great Greek astronomer and mathematician Aristarchus of Samos discovered not only that the planets, including the Earth, revolve around the sun, not the other way around, but the stars were just other celestial bodies like the sun, albeit further away from the Earth. Aristarchus' discovery, and more importantly, his sharing it openly with the world, is an unparalleled achievement that can never be taken away from him or the Greek people, and that is not my intent here. And yet, I believe that a few points of evidence suggest that this wisdom and much more may already have been given to the people of Israel at least as far back as the giving of the Torah and embodied in temple ceremony and encoded in the menorah's true form. First of all, we only have the confidence to even make such a connection, to even go in this direction, thanks to a brilliant observation by Sir Isaac Newton. In his great Latin manuscript, Theologia Gentilis Origines Philosophicae, Philosophical Origins of Gentile Theology, Sir Isaac Newton argued that many of the early nations acknowledged the heliocentric or sun-centered system in the architecture of their temples, or prytaniae, which were constructed around central fires that represented the sun. In the Jewish tabernacle and temple, for example, the altar of burnt offerings, Mizbach HaOlah, was this central fire. Accordingly, when the Kohanim on Sukkoth would encircle the altar with 4 species in hand, as Jews do from year to year in our synagogues, hakafot, we are essentially imitating the movement of the planets around the sun. This last Sukkot, I remarked to students how, when you consider large Torah centers like Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, and Bnei Brak, each with over 1,000 synagogues and minyanim, with worshippers doing their hakafot, you get the image of a great galaxy with great numbers of solar systems, communities moving in unison in a common direction determined by laws originating from a central force, the temple, not Sagittarius A. According to the Babylonian Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat 129b, you can see Rashi there, the menorah's 7 branches corresponded to the 7 great celestial bodies of heaven, including the sun, moon, and the 5 planets visible to the unaided eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. wonderfully, we have a source going back 550 years before the Talmud was compiled, verifying that. In the Wars of the Jews, Josephus Flavius explains that the 7 lamps upon the 7 branches of the Holy Temple's golden menorah represented the 7 planets, the solar system as it was understood in his day. But considering our Torah tradition that we basically go with non-Jewish scholarship, we trust non-Jewish scholarship in regards to secular wisdom, חכמה בגויים תאמין, particularly the wisdom of Japheth, the Greeks. And you can see how, when you're listening to the right Greek, just how much brilliant sense that makes. But could it be that when non-Jewish scholarship chose to go with Aristotle over Aristarchus about 2,260 years ago, that our own few voices that knew the truth, that we with the other planets revolve around the sun, were drowned out and lost? So let's move on to the shape of the menorah. As much as anyone can appreciate Maimonides, the great Rambam, what an amazing job he did preserving our authentic Torah traditions, when it comes to his position on the shape of the golden menorah, he seems to have been mistaken. For years, I thought his famous diagram of the menorah was purely schematic and not intended to show the actual shape. However, after coming across a defense of Harav Avraham Hanagid, the Rambam's son, defending his father's position regarding a straight-branched menorah, it is clear that the Rambam, like Rashi, were mistaken on this, but only barely. You see, there is much evidence, not only from the first few centuries after the temple's destruction, but also from Second Temple period depictions of the menorah, showing what the true shape of the 7-branched menorah really looked like. That the branches were curved at the bottom, but then rose up vertically quite sharply. They were both curved and quite straight. Let's begin with this image. A carving found in a drainage channel between the city of David and the Jerusalem archaeological garden from the Second Temple period itself. This is extremely important because it's a depiction of the menorah, no matter how simple it might be, not only from the time, but being very, very local, being close to where the temple actually stood itself. And you can see that the branches are slightly curved, but also quite straight. And this, in my humble opinion, is probably the most important image. This is a depiction of the menorah on the floor of what was a beautiful home of Second Temple priests, Kohanim. This is the floor of what is known today as the burnt house in the Jewish quarter of the old city of Jerusalem. You can see how straight the branches are after curving more towards the bottom. And you can see the same pattern in other Second Temple depictions of the menorah. This is a coin issued by the last Hasmonean king, Antigonus II Matityahu, who died circa 37 BCE. So this is from around 40 before the Common Era, showing the menorah and the table of the showbread. Here is another image of ancient Second Temple depictions of the menorah. Again, same pattern, sharply ascending, very slightly but quite straight curved branches. And again, it's the same coin issued by Matityahu, Antigonus, circa 40 BCE. Show that a little bit more closely. And this is an amazing image. This is from a sarcophagus And just get a little bit larger for you. And you can see a menorah depiction from the Second Temple period on what is the oldest structure securely dated as a synagogue by the Israel Antiquities Authority. It is from anywhere between 50 BCE and 100 CE. Okay, so you may be asking why I'm not talking about the famous image from the Arch of Titus. I mean, what could be better than an actual realistic picture of the relic itself? So basically we're going to see, this image is actually going to be important for us, but not in the way that you might think. And in it, we're going to it's going to be a beautiful segue back into the solar system as it truly is. You see, besides being an eyewitness through the menorah as it actually stood in the temple itself, Josephus Flavius was actually an eyewitness to the very parade you're looking at right here. The parading of the menorah through the streets of Rome that is etched in stone on the Arch of Titus. And he provides a testimony in the Wars of the Jews in Book 7, Chapter 5, as to how the menorah, as it was paraded through the streets of Rome, was changed from its original form. You see, concerning the changed menorah paraded through Rome, he writes, and I'm going to quote here from an old English translation from a few hundred years ago. In it, it refers to the menorah as the candlestick. So please forgive the archaic English. This is a quote from the translation. The candlestick also, that was made of gold, though its construction were now changed from that which we made use of, for its middle shaft was fixed upon a basis, and the small branches were produced out of it to a great length, having the likeness of a trident in their position, and had every one a socket made of brass for a lamp at the tops of them. In simpler language, Josephus is telling us that not only was the replica different from the original in that the base, meaning the stairs, were now attached to the middle shaft, as we see on screen, but of course in stark contradiction to halakha. But the branches were widened, they were lengthened out sideways to make it look more like a trident, giving the branches a wider curve. So you can look at these photos of a trident and you can get the picture. Of course, the Romans morphed the menorah's shape to better resemble a trident, the deadly weapon of the gladiators, to better impress the ignorant crowds that they had captured the sacred source of the Jews' power, the icon that gave the mighty Jews their great military strength. So that's all very interesting facts, but what's the connection with the solar system? Well, let's go back to the image on the Arch of Titus. See, the menorah is essentially, in shape, three parabolas. Three parabolas. Which bisected by the central shaft. So if the lamps atop the branches represented the planets, and it was originally a depiction of a heliocentric system, those parabolas depict the orbits of the planets around the central fire, the sun. So now if the original curvature of those parabolas was this wider curve that you see here on the Arch of Titus, and let's just, if you follow these wider parabolas around, you see what seems to be a depiction of very circular orbits, okay, such as the solar system imagined by Copernicus and probably Aristarchus of Samos himself. Okay, so of course we know that the orbits of the planets are not completely circular. They are elongated. They are ellipses. The planets orbit the sun in elongated elliptical orbits. Now, if the branches of the menorah, okay, let's go back to the menorah just to make sure that you see what I'm talking about. Okay, if they were straighter and rose up vertically, okay, more sharply, then you basically would have three parabolas with more closed openings, with more closed apertures, which would hint of orbits that are elliptical. And that is, in fact, what we find in science, is that the planets, like I just said, orbit in large ellipses. Now, you remember the shape of the branches of the menorah depiction on the floor of the burnt house, verified by depictions of on Second Temple era coins and that sarcophagus? Here you can see parabolas with more closed apertures, not so wide and circular, okay, like trident, like parabolas. So we see that according to the true meaning of the menorah's shape, as recorded in the Talmud, and is verified for us by Josephus, if the temple indeed preserved the astronomical secrets regarding a heliocentric solar system, again, a notion that we get from Sir Isaac Newton and his observations about the altar in the Holy Temple, we might be seeing here a hint of wisdom that goes beyond Copernicus and Galileo, but to the later discovery of Johann Kepler, that the planets orbit the sun in elliptical orbits. Now, if we allow ourselves to go even further, where would the Earth be in this depiction? Okay, so again, these would represent the planets in their orbits. Well, okay, where would the sun be? What would this picture basically be telling us? So depending on your vantage point, we would either be at the vernal equinox, meaning the point of mid-spring, Passover, Pesach, or the autumnal equinox, the point of mid-autumn. In other words, it's entirely possible that there's a hidden message here embodied in the shape of the menorah from the vantage point of the Kohen lighting it, that perhaps he was looking at the heavens, at our solar system, at mid-spring, at the point of Passover, Pesach, the birthday of the nation of Israel, when we left Egypt with all that represented behind us, casting our fate with the love and compassion of the Holy One, blessed be He. Again, it can't be confirmed. It's a maybe, but it makes great sense. Isn't it amazing? What's more, okay, when we look at it this way, we can actually discover greater symmetry in the cosmos than we might have ever realized, perhaps suggesting design. I know that's a word that greatly upsets the scientific community, and very sadly so, but that's what they need to do, of course, in order to stay objective. Implied in this connection between the solar system and its, with its elliptical orbits, and the shape of the menorah, is that there are sets of visible planets that come in twos. Indeed, that is what we find looking at the planets in order. Let's take a look. Zoom in. So, of course, we have Mercury and Venus, both rocky planets of blistering hot desert that lack any moons or rocky satellites. As inferior planets, quote unquote, they orbit the sun in much less time than the Earth does, and sometimes appear as black dots, transiting across the face of the sun from our vantage point, and passing from our perspective through different phases like our moon. Then we have the Earth and Mars, which also form an amazing pair. Why? Well, they're both rocky planets with a similar axial tilt, similar day length, both have polar ice, and both may have harbored life, at least in the ancient past. And get this, both of them have not one, but two moons. That's right. You may not be aware, but the Earth actually has a second moon. Very few people know that. There's an asteroid that we've managed to catch at some point in time. And now besides our beautiful moon, we have an asteroid as well. Just as Mars has two small rocky moons. The next pair, a very, very fitting pair, is Jupiter and Saturn. Both are enormous ringed gas giants of very low density, spinning at incredible speeds, both with over 60 moons each, both having one moon that is larger than Mercury, Jupiter's Ganymede, and Saturn's Titan, and one that is at least one that is an icy moon. We have Jupiter's Europa and Saturn's Enceladus. And we have a hidden pair, a pair that was not visible to the naked eye, which evokes not the menorah in the temple, but the menorah of Hanukkah, the Hanukkah. We have a hidden fourth pair, Uranus and Neptune. Both are smaller ringed blue gas planets, close in color and of nearly the same size, with a median number of moons, 27 and 14 respectively, between 10 and 30 you can say. Both have interiors made up of the same elements, hydrogen, helium, and liquid water with ammonia mixed in, different from the composition of Jupiter and Saturn. And both Uranus and Neptune are thought to have Earth-sized solid cores made of molten rock and metal. Both planets have very similar temperatures at their cloud tops, even though Neptune receives about 40% less sunlight. So, according to this model, the menorah not only reflects astronomical wisdom, and not to be discovered until Johann Kepler in the early 17th century, the Menorah, it even has predictive power, suggesting wisdom about the planets only discovered in the last century. Okay, again, let's just see that on the menorah itself. Okay, just, if you can just bear with me. Okay, this is the way that I imagine it. Well, imagine what is being represented here. The interior planets, Mercury and Venus, those closest to the central fire. Earth, opposite Mars, the second pair, and the third pair, Jupiter and Saturn. Again, these are the only planets that they could have cared about, because those were the only ones who that they could see. And of course, there's that hidden fourth pair, which reminds us of the menorah of Hanukkah, of the Hanukkah. To me, this is just plainly awe-inspiring. So, in conclusion, why would the ancient generations of biblical prophets have kept such knowledge hidden? Isn't the approach of the Greeks to illuminate the world, to illuminate the minds of all mankind with such wisdom more noble? Before answering that, I will say that in our own day, spreading the knowledge of science and astronomy is so important, and I'm not here to knock that in the slightest. However, according to the thinking of our prophets and sages in those days, such wisdom reflects the greatness of Hashem, and they believed it should be restricted from spiritually ignorant people who would abuse and make light of them. Okay, and from their perspective, the most awesome things known to them, like the true pronunciation of Hashem's four-letter name, the ultra-precise length of the lunar cycle, and perhaps these astronomical wonders, if they're verified to be factual, if these were just to become mundane factoids, to be tossed around lightly over alcohol or in latrines by people with no awareness of Hashem, that would be somewhat of a desecration. Anyway, agree with them or not, that was their feeling. And you know, there is something deep to learn from it. The wonders of scientific discovery should be treated as a gift from Hashem. I mean, how unspeakably rare, if not entirely unique, is it that in this vast cosmos, for a creation such as us to arise, worthy of such intelligence and discovery, rather than giving us the feeling of being gods ourselves, as such wisdom leads many people to feel like, such knowledge should give us proper awe to realize just how small we are and how greatly ignorant we still remain. Perhaps, if more people treated secular wisdom with greater sanctity, they might just use it for better, loftier aims rather than selfish, self-serving goals. All the best to you all. Hanukkah Sameach, happy Hanukkah. Shalom, shalom.